Okay, so this is emplemon. If you don't know who emplemon is, just from what I gather, he is a Team Fortress 2 player, and I know everyone has their opinion on Team Fortress 2 players, but I will say this: he makes good videos. He makes good videos. He has that going for him. As a gamer, I don't really care about him. Honestly, I don't care about any main TF2 guy. This was made 2 years from today, by the way. It is called Valve's new game looks like certified trash. And what I will say is that the game Deadlock has changed a lot since then. This is literally my first time fucking actually watching this video. This is first impressions. If you know me, I'm a fiend for fucking Deadlock. I started playing it August 2025. And since then, I have basically, it's been my go-to MOBA. I've basically circled back to playing MOBAs from, Smite in, 2015. So, basically, 10-year cycle. Anyways, let's watch this shit. So, a lot of this shit probably did age.
Welcome back, everyone, to another Downward Day. And today on the channel, we're going to be doing something a little bit egregious, even by my standards. We're going to be calling a game bad before it has even been publicly announced. That's right, everyone, we're sinking to new lows every day here on the Downward Diary. So I'm just letting you know right off the bat that this opinion is already going to piss off a lot of people. And I don't usually do topical hot take videos like this. I have a feeling that most YouTubers whose content primarily exists off of reacting to modern news with hot takes involves them mostly phoning it in and doing it out of obligation because that's what the audience expects them to do. But I can assure you that this is not the case here with me. Because the reason I'm making this video is that this is a hot take I feel that I absolutely have to get off my chest. So I'm recording this shortly after some leaks came out about the new Valve game that is yet to be announced but is anticipated to be released sometime soon. The game is apparently going to be called Deadlock, and it's set to be the first new Valve IP in God knows how long, at least 15 years probably. And you know, I personally consider myself a Valve fan. I've sunk countless hours into Valve products over the years and had a lot of fun and really enjoyed the experience. And I appreciate Valve, at least their early work, as being cornerstones of the gaming industry and truly providing some of the greatest works of art in the entire field of video games. And at an earlier time in my life, I feel like I would have been way more excited about this news. But in recent years, the past 5 or 6 years in particular, I, as well as a lot of other people, have become quite jaded over the direction of the video game industry. I've become skeptical of the efficacy of major game studios to put out good products, and even the once spotless, impeccable reputation of a company like Valve has been tarnished for me in the past several years for a variety of factors, primarily relating to the negligence of their already established franchises and player bases with
TF2. What'd I tell you guys? TF2 player, man.
which are still seeking support for their games and just basically being left on radio silence. My overall opinion of Valve as a company has leveled out to the point where I can approach new releases with a sort of eyebrow-raising skepticism. Enough time has passed at this point since the golden age of Valve, where you can no longer really count on each new Valve release being a 10 out of 10 masterpiece like you could maybe 15 years ago. A pretty big factor for which being that they've hardly come out with any games over the last decade or so. And what they have come out with, if we're being honest with ourselves, really hasn't been that impactful. They've failed to connect to audiences in the same way that the company once did in the 2000s. And the reason I bring all this up is to highlight that there is absolutely no momentum behind a new Valve release right now. All the hype and goodwill that something like this could have had has been pretty well burned through at this point from a lack of anything exciting really coming out of the company in the past decade. I'd honestly say that Valve is in sort of a lame duck position right now, where they haven't really had anything going for them in such a long time, and so many other more exciting products have come out and sort of pushed them to the backseat of people's attention in the gaming industry, that whatever they put out next is going to have some juice behind it. It's going to need something to pull people in. Now that the extreme loyalty and brand worship that Valve once had has mostly petered out from such prolonged inaction. And this is all to suggest that if whatever this next game is misses the mark, you can be expected to see Valve's reputation as a company tank in a way that has never been seen in their entire existence. And so, when you think about the new game, Deadlock, whatever it ends up actually accomplishing, this is the weight that is going to be placed on its shoulders going in. And ladies and gentlemen, from what I've seen so far of the game, I have to say that the prognosis is not looking good. In fact, from how I've heard these playtesters summarize and describe what the game is like, it honestly sounds like complete garbage to me. As in an idea that should have been thrown in the dumpster at the pitch meeting, which has somehow evolved into an entire full-fledged project that the company appears to be gambling their entire legacy on for the foreseeable future. So my reactions here are going to be based on the Tyler McVicker video about the new title, where he attempts to aggregate and summarize all the leaked information about this new release. And oh my god, if this description of the game ends up being accurate, we are going to...
Hold on. I just want to say, this is amazing that he's gained his opinion on the game from another fucking video, and that this video is just, like, reacting to it. Anyways, let's continue.
Have an absolute dumpster fire on our hands. So, to paraphrase here, McVicker basically describes the game as a cross between Counter-Strike and Overwatch and Valorant and TF2 and Dota and Tower Defense. This is...
Okay. What I will say is this. It is not Overwatch. You don't push a cart. It is also not Counter-Strike. I don't know where the fuck he's getting that from. It's not Valorant either. It is more like the last three. Team Fortress 2, Dota, and Balloon Tower Defense, wherever the fuck. But for the most part, Balloon Tower Defense, that has more to do with Dota. So it, in general, it is more like TF2 combined with Dota, but it is a third-person shooter, whereas TF2 is a first-person shooter. But yeah, this all the rest of that's fluff. That don't need to be there.
Apparently how the closed access beta testers are describing the game.
It looks like Valorant, Overwatch, Dota 2, and TF2 had a baby.
It's apparently some unholy mixture of every popular esports genre, just haphazardly smushed together in some hideous stew of game design. Wow, everyone, you get to play Counter-Strike and Dota and Overwatch all in the same game? Doesn't that sound fun? To me, it sounds completely nauseating. It's...
Again, reductive language used basically to describe a very complicated fucking concept. Because that is the thing, is that when you get into a game of Deadlock, let's say, like, that's your impression, right, of what Deadlock is. When you get into a game of Deadlock and finish it, will you say the exact same thing? I guarantee you, you will not.
It sounds like some foul mutant abomination that should be taken behind the woodshed and shot. Oh my god, I don't think I've ever conceptually heard of a game whose core concept, the elevator pitch, the slug, the pure description of what the game is, I've never heard something so unappealing. And hopefully, for the sake of my sanity, these beta testers or these leakers or whoever is reporting on this information is mistaken, or they're oversimplifying things, or they're leaving something out. But as it stands now, how this game is being described, just the thought of it is making me physically nauseous. And if Valve releases this thing as it's currently being described, I am foreseeing a total embarrassment. And to some of you, this may sound completely ridiculous. Like, how can I judge a game that hasn't even been officially announced yet at the time of recording this audio? How can I possibly be so unfair as to write off a game before it's even been announced? And to be honest, I can't offer you a sound explanation as to how what I'm saying is reasonable at all. But the best I can say is describe this
'Cause
whole
it isn't.
thing as a matter of intuition. And this is something in the past several years I've been trying to learn how to do, to listen to my intuition more. And let me tell you folks something. The very instant I heard people describe this game as a mix between Counter-Strike and Overwatch
Which
and
it
Dota
isn't.
and TF2, the alarm bells immediately went off in my head. I had never been more repulsed by a single description of a game. And this
Because
is
it's
all without a
inaccurate.
single ounce of thought dedicated to the idea. It was an immediate, automatic, rushing feeling of dread. Just the most tremendous gut feeling that this thing is going to be a disaster. Just what a hideously awful idea from the very onset. Mixing Counter-Strike and Overwatch and Dota and TF2 to form some ungodly spawn of Satan that's just begging to be euthanized. It sounds like something a 4-year-old would come up with who has no understanding of how anything works or how any aspects of design are actually supposed to work. It's as if to say, oh boy, I sure do love pizza and burgers and sushi and tacos. Those are all really great, delicious things, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to mix them all into a giant, mushy soup. Just blend it all together without a care in the world. And surely, since the initial distinct things you put in are all tasty and well-liked, the final product is going to end up more delicious than any of them. Like, does no one else see a problem with just haphazardly mixing together a bunch of totally disparate things that are each completely distinct from one another, and the reasons why they are good and they work are completely different from each other? Do you not see how just mushing them all together into one unrecognizable conglomerate may not be the best idea? Not to mention the fact that each of these games...
Which, again, I'm going to state, it is third-person mechanics with a MOBA-style rule set, basically. So if any... I will say this, from playing it, because I have played it a bunch, the mechanics do make sense for the game. It does make sense for it to have, like, the MOBA aspect to it. Especially, I also talked with this with my friend, too, when it comes to CSing. Essentially, like, getting your gold, getting your money from waves. The whole aspect of, like, the minion's soul popping out, which that's only half the money you make off the minions. Because there's also the money that falls on the ground, too. But the whole, like, basically what it is it's a target. It's a floating target that basically can be shot at once it glows, pretty much. That, I think, is a smart integration of the third-person shooter mechanics being integrated correctly with the MOBA mechanics. I don't think this is like a pragmata of, like, basically just slap on a puzzle game to a third-person shooter, but they don't really have, like, any natural synergy.
Games have completely different player bases, which each enjoy completely different aspects of the first-person shooter and or MOBA experience. In fact, each of the games listed as the ingredients for whatever this unholy abomination Deadlock title is, they tend to command such distinct player bases that the fan bases of each of these titles are basically mutually exclusive, meaning that if you try to map out a Venn diagram of the CSGO player base and the Dota 2 player base, you would basically have two circles that are not even touching. There is very, very little cross...
I will also say this too, when it comes to Deadlock, I feel like it doesn't actually have that, like, nice middle ground. I would say there is overlap between some of those. However, when it comes down to it, the Dota players are turned off by the shooter aspects, and the Counter-Strike / TF2 players are turned off by the MOBA aspects of it. And there's a very small percentage of players in both those camps that actually find, like, that they like the middle ground. Which for me, I also partially think that because I have a background in Smite and I played TF2. So it's like I understand, like, how Valve's sort of, like, shooters work. And I do understand how a MOBA works. So I think that's why it's like, for me, it was very, like, fertile ground to basically hop in and enjoy the game.
Over between these games, if any. People who like the realistic and gritty shooting mechanics of Counter-Strike are not going to like Dota magical super particle effect
I'll
fantasy
say,
world.
in
This
that
is just
terms,
something
it
so
is more
simple,
TF2 like.
I don't even think it needs to be explained.
It's not too
And
many
personally
realistic
speaking,
guns.
I consider myself a fan of the TF2 flavor of Valve shooters. And I tried playing CSGO, and I didn't really like it. And I tried playing Dota, and I really didn't like it. If I happen to be a fan of TF2 specifically, why would I want to play a game where it's TF2 mixed with CSGO and Dota?
It probably
Are the
is more TF2 than
aspects
Dota or
supposed to be
CSGO.
some kind of sweetener to get me through the door, just to end up playing something that is completely antithetical to the gameplay of TF2? And again, I'd understand you could probably rightfully call this rant an overreaction if it was just kind of hearsay, but there are
It is
leaked
overreactions.
screenshots from the game that look quite legitimate, and at this point, for the sake of argument, let's just assume they're real. And one of the screenshots clearly shows the minimap having lanes like in Dota and League of Legends, and my immediate reaction on seeing that is just, ugh. Oh my god, lanes, dude. You're trying to sell me this game being like TF2, class-based shooter, and you're putting in lanes? How disgusting.
It's not supposed to be
And look,
TF2.
I understand there are people out there probably watching this who enjoy MOBAs, and this is just my personal preference. But did Valve ever think to look at their player base and the specific types of people who enjoy the specific IPs they have? Did they not ask?
Because it's not TF2. It's not TF2 the MOBA. It is Deadlock. It is something new. They are making something new. They're not making TF2 the MOBA. They're not making games to basically entice their players they already have playing TF2, playing CSGO. They're making a new game with a new name that is a lot like their older games.
Ask themselves, who the hell actually wants this? A hero shooter where I have to pick a lane and probably go jungling and get gold. It just sounds like...
You don't actually have to go jungling. To be honest, you do make more money just laning, and you could literally just sit on like one lane and just like play tower defense. That is actually a very viable thing to do.
like such trash. Oh my god. Whenever I'm playing TF2, which is not much anymore because they let the game go to complete shit, the first thing I'm always thinking about whenever I'm rocket jumping around as the soldier is, what if this game was just more like League of Legends? I don't think I could ever conceive of something so putrid. Yet here we are. Apparently, this is going to be Valve's new title. This incestuous MOBA shooter hybrid abomination, which is probably realistically going to most closely resemble Overwatch. And again, what an absolute insult to
it's
the
not
Valve
Overwatch.
loyalists out there. Where we already have a superior class-based shooter to Overwatch, and that's TF2, and you basically let that go down the toilet through complete negligence, and then you're just going to come out with this. A hero shooter 5 years after Overwatch and the
Not a
entire
hero shooter
genre already became irrelevant and unpopular. Let's be honest, folks. I understand the meme of
Not a
Valve
hero
time,
shooter.
but this is ridiculous. I'm pretty confident that most of the gaming consumer base at this point has already moved on from the hero shooter genre. Most people have already...
No, it is funny he says this. He says this as Marvel Rivals has been popular and has stayed popular. But I will say this, when it comes to the whole, like, oh, Deadlock is going to be a hero shooter, mobile, whatever, like, it's not a hero shooter. Hero shooters don't have minions. They don't have objectives you destroy. They have capture points, and they have payloads you push. They also don't have an economy, like Deadlock does. That is more MOBA aspects of it. The MOBA aspects are real. You can't play it like a hero shooter. I had a friend that tried to do that, and it did not work because he kept team fighting while he was down on money and basically weaker than the enemy. And he was very insistent to tell me that was a hero shooter until it slapped him in his face that it is not.
He deduced that mixing shooter elements with a MOBA doesn't really work. There are way too many contrasting and anti-synergistic game design components that make these types of games practically impossible to balance correctly. And yes, these games still have dedicated player bases, just like how I'm sure Imagine Dragons has a very dedicated fan base But the rest of the general consumer has started to view these things as a bunch of gimmicky crap. And for Valve to basically be coming out with their own version of this 8 years after the genre was actually at the peak of its popularity, it comes off as very backwards and out of touch. And it doesn't feel Valve-like in that regard, or at least the reputation that Valve once had, as constantly being on the cutting edge of new ideas and new technology. Alright everyone, step right.
Which it also just isn't realistic to be that, especially in terms of gaming, because think about it, no company in general has been on the cutting edge of gaming in like the last 10 years. No, none of them have. The ones that have tried have crashed and burned. And arguably right now, the whole expansion of gaming is more with esports, honestly. But in terms of like the actual experience of playing video games, all that shit has basically tapered off.
Right up, let's gather around, let's get excited for this new Valve game. Alright, what is it? It's a hero shooter. Really? In 2024? And maybe this game will come out in 2025, but really?
It won't.
We're expecting
It
people
still hasn't come out.
to be excited about a new hero shooter in 2024. Hey Valve, if you're taking such bright ideas, I have an idea. Why don't you come out with a 100-player Battle Royale mode? Because that idea clearly hasn't been done to death yet. Wow, another hero shooter, how exciting. But hey, don't
Not a
worry
hero
about
shooter.
it. Valve makes good games. I'm sure this game is going to be good. I'm sure it's going to be less of a dumpster fire than Overwatch, at least. And it's really strange to me how so much of the gaming community at this point still has this prevailing belief that Valve still makes these super polished, flawless products. Because if you look at the last 3 titles...
Flawless, I wouldn't say so. And when it comes to all of these games he's listing right here, well, 2 of them are very minor releases, and 1 is just a fresh painted coat for Counter-Strike, so I don't know what you want me to tell you, man.
that Valve has officially come out with. One of them has been underwhelming, and one of them has been a complete catastrophic disaster. So for people out there thinking, oh, how can Valve possibly screw up a game? We've already seen it happen. Counter-Strike 2 has been frequently cited as a worse experience than Counter-Strike 1, and it's completely filled and infested with hackers. So yeah, to all you CS players out there having a bad time with hackers, as a TF2 fan, I can sincerely say, get used to it, because Valve has probably moved on from your game and gotten your money, and you finally reached the stage where your game has gotten old enough to where Valve is going to have you falsely hold out for some salvation that's never coming. So while I can certainly sympathize with the newfound plight of the CS player, the best consolation for them I can come up with is telling them to get used to the negligence and mismanagement. Because this is how it's been in the TF2 space for, the last 7 years. Don't let the 2 next to the title fool you. You guys are not the new toy anymore. This new, wonderful hero shooter is. So you guys better enjoy getting locked away in the toy chest, just like we have for the past almost decade. But anyway, butthurt TF2 rant aside. It appears that the launch of CS2 has not been very popular among fans, but that pales in comparison to what is truly one of the biggest catastrophic failures in the entire gaming industry in the past 10 years, and that is the launch and immediate death of Artifact. A game that at this point has been pretty much memory holed out of existence, and one that you're not really supposed to talk about or acknowledge ever happened. But when it comes to the case of, I don't know, assessing the efficacy of Valve of actually being able to release high-profile games, I think that the case of Artifact bears repeating. A game that was met with immediate, sour disappointment the moment it was revealed, and one that within months of release collapsed to a concurrent player count so low that I would not be surprised if it has been subsequently delisted from the Steam store. This was a brand new Valve game, everyone, at a time when people had a much higher opinion about Valve than they do right now even. It came out at a time when there was still a great deal of hype and consumer goodwill towards Valve, and just look at what happened. And that was just a card game, a genre which is undoubtedly popular, and a gameplay format that at the very least doesn't sound conceptually stupid. I mean, it's not like they came out with a card game mixed with Mario Kart and Smash Bros. It was just a straightforward card game, and look what happened. So do you really think a game that people are calling a mix between CSGO and Dota and tower defense is not going to meet the same fate? And again, it's worth mentioning that Artifact, Valve's most catastrophic failure as a company, happened to fall within the shadow of a more popular Blizzard product. And you gotta imagine that this new hero shooter combined with MOBA elements, is gonna be most closely compared to Overwatch. And while in the case of Artifact, its rival competitor Hearthstone was actually growing and maintaining the popularity of its genre, Overwatch has pretty much already tainted this genre as a joke for so many people. So much of the gaming consumer base at this point considers the pseudo-MOBA first-person, third-person shooter genre to be a joke, largely due to the downward spiral of Overwatch. And so if you're Valve, you're trying to enter this market that the consumer has already written off as passé at best, and really, as more people see it, a frustrating, unfun game type, riddled with mechanics that don't make sense design-wise. That's the slice of the market you're trying to corner as Valve. Does this whole thing not sound just as idiotic to the rest of you? And to repeat an earlier point, this doesn't feel like Valve. At least not the Valve that I grew up with in the 2000s. Because when I think of Valve as a company, I don't associate them with bland, generic, competitive gaming clusterfucks. Although maybe that's what many people do now, because that's largely how their direction has been defined in the 2010s. But back when they made actual, new, original titles that pushed the needle and progressed the art of video games forward, I tend to think of well-written, atmospheric games with great art direction and cool physics systems. The classic lineup of Half-Life, Portal, Left 4 Dead. This is pretty much the essence of Valve for me. Not whatever stupid shit they're doing now with competitive gaming and esports and loot cases and selling.
They've been very offhand with it.
Although maybe at this point I must admit that my view of the company is
at least with Deadlock. Can't say anything about CSGO.
This is what they are now. Sweaty, frustrating, unwatchable competitive games with gambling, loot boxes, and item economies that they take a 15% cut out of. And that is realistically what this new game is going to be. Except even more stupid conceptually. And visually, looking at these supposed leaked screenshots, the game looks completely generic. There's nothing aesthetically unique about it. There's nothing about it that screams Valve. Whereas you can take any screenshot from Portal or Half-Life or Left 4 Dead and immediately tell it's in the source engine and that it's under Valve's art direction. Whatever this game is, doesn't look like any of that. It kind of just looks like Overwatch, maybe even closer to Paladins. So the art direction, already, from the onset, looks completely mediocre. What about the writing? We don't have any details for that yet, but I have a pretty strong feeling that the writing is going to be just as lame and generic as pretty much any other game that's come out in the last 10 years. Oh, but Valve games have such great writing and world building. Yeah, maybe back when they used to actually employ talented writers, people who were let go from the company 10 years ago. And trust me, as someone who's been waiting for TF2 Comics number 7 to come out for the last 10 years, it fills me with a special feeling knowing that the guy they hired to write them no longer works at the company anymore. At least I'm pretty sure that's the case. So you think this game is actually going to have good writing? From what writers? Because the people who did the best writing at Valve haven't worked there for pretty much the past decade. So no, when it comes to the prospect of this game having writing that's not a bunch of generic hero fantasy crap fresh out of Overwatch and League of Legends, I guess I'll believe it when I see it. But when this garbage eventually comes out and flops horribly, I don't want to see anyone comparing it to the brilliant, subtle art direction and writing of TF2.
He's gonna say TF2. He's gonna say TF2. I knew it.
Against this game that hasn't even been officially announced. And who knows? I might be completely proven wrong. And you can all go back to this video in 2 years when this game is a tremendous, rousing success and has surpassed
Success,
CS:GO
not so
and
much.
TF2 and Dota 2 and Overwatch and successfully unified.
It's funny he said
all
2 years,
four of
because
these
it has been
completely
exactly
different
2 years.
franchise fan bases. Maybe it's going to happen, and this game is not going to be some horrible mixture, and it's just going to be like the Avatar of gaming, finally bringing
It's
balance
not.
and harmony to all the different disciplines of shooters and MOBAs or whatever. But to me, right now, it all just sounds like a bunch of junk. Valve is about to come
Because
out
you got
with a
your
game
opinion from
that is
someone
gonna
else that did
provide
not
players with
accurately
nothing
describe the
but
game.
junk. And I really think there is a high chance that by the end of the decade, none of us are going to be looking at Valve in the same way because of whatever this monstrosity is that they're about to unleash on the market.
I will say,
We used to make games. Now we make money.
actually, let's leave it on that last
We
one.
used to make games. Now we make money.
I will say this. The majority of this video was more about just honestly discontent with Valve, which I can agree with. And obviously a lot has changed in the game in 2 years, because the map has changed, the even like the way that the map looks has changed, aesthetically has changed to more of like this noir, like HP Lovecraft kind of aesthetic. So it has significantly improved in the 2 years he's made that have passed since he made this video. And I am reacting on June 4th. Then this video came out on June 4th, 2024. Currently is June 4th, 2026. So I will say this. As of right now, I would say emplemon, your predictions are not looking so great. But that's just my first honest reactions to TF2 fanboy crybaby thinks that Deadlock is certified trash. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.